publication with an active readership of 25,000 plus marketers from across the Middle East and Africa. On behalf of my team, I want to welcome you all to another MarTech Mandate, a bi-monthly online briefing where we address the trending topics in MarTech and AdTech with regional experts. I want to begin today's session by thanking Telium for supporting our vision of empowering marketers in this region and building a savvy community of MarTech professionals. Today, we're addressing a very crucial topic that could potentially change the world of advertising. Well, as we know, identity is hard, and it's getting even more complex with Google's recent announcement that it plans to end support for third-party cookies in its Chrome browser within the next 2 years. This move will have the greatest impact on digital channels as they rely on reach as a key benchmark for targeting audiences. New alternatives will be need to develop for advertisers to move forward without cookies. In the UAE, the government is set to pass its own GDPR and CCPA equivalent data privacy laws aimed at safeguarding consumer rights. To gain a broader understanding of the overall situation and how marketers and advertisers can navigate through this, we have with us today a very inspiring panel that will discuss strategies marketers can build to unlock the power of first-party data. Before we start the session, I would like to highlight that the panel will take questions from you in the last 15 minutes. I request you all to please address your questions in the Q&A section and not in the chat section. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the panel moderator for this session, Kunal Badiani. Kunal is the Regional Director for Telium, managing the Middle East and Africa markets. Prior to Telium, Kunal was managing the SaaS portfolio for IBM Watson customer engagement. He has also had 2 stints with Oracle Marketing Cloud in Australia and the UAE. He has worked on large-scale digital transformation initiatives in India, Australia, GCC, and Africa. Thank you for joining us today, Kunal.
No worries, Sanjay. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope you can hear me okay, you can see me okay.
Yes, we can. It's a pleasure to have you with us, and I'll leave the session to you now, Kunal.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Firstly, let me start by saying thank you to you, Sanjay, the MarTech Vibe community, and your entire team for putting together this type of forum that allows all of us that are on the Zoom call today to try and take advantage of all of the insights that I know TJ, Yomna, and Steve will be sharing. So really excited. And it's a really pertinent topic, right? I was told by someone that today, actually, the 4th of August, is National Chocolate Chip Cookie Day in America. And what an auspicious day to be talking about cookies. Definitely not chocolate chip ones, but the ones that marketers are in love with even more. So it'll be very interesting as we go through the panel over the next 40 odd minutes and try and soak as much of the insights as the panelists will be able to share with us. Housekeeping, as Sanjay mentioned, we will be pausing towards the back end with 15 minutes to go for questions from all of you. So please feel free to keep those questions coming as you hear anything that you'd like to discuss with the panel. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I have the privilege now of introducing our amazing panelists, starting with TJ. TJ Lightwala is the MD for Accenture Interactive in the MENA region. In her current role, she's responsible for the development and growth of the capabilities of digital and data services in the region, which are great and much needed. So absolutely awesome. And in the past, she's had large stints with Group M, Mindshare, and in the US as well with Merrill Lynch as an example. And with all of these brands, she's put in place strategies to optimize and improve their digital performance. So welcome to the panel, TJ.
Thank you for having me.
No problem, it's our honor. The second introduction I get the good fortune of making is Yomna Borgol. Yomna is the Chief Data Officer for Shori Group. And as part of her role within the Shori Group, she's put in place digitally focused strategies to help the Shori Group grow into a multi-platform media company, which currently is unparalleled in reach and enthusiasm from its audience. She started her career as a data scientist in Australia and has a PhD in media analytics with over 15 years of experience across this domain. So welcome to the panel, Yomna. Really excited that you're joining.
Thank you for having me as well.
Awesome. And last but not the least, Steve Locke. Steve is the former global head of MarTech at The Economist, publication I love reading. And him, with him at the head of the MarTech ecosystem at The Economist, his team has won several awards in optimizing the user experience using data and digital. He currently consults on various things in terms of the confluence of how data, content, and technology come together to not just optimize user experience, customer engagement, but all things media as well. So welcome to the panel, Steve.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Awesome. Great. So let's not waste any more time. We get an hour or so with you guys, so let's kick off. So it feels like, you know, this topic is really pertinent, right? Google's announcement in January. But even before Google's announcement, it feels like marketers have been playing catch up over the last couple of years with all of the different changes that have been announced by the various browsers, whether it's Apple's ITP or Firefox following suit. It feels like we're all playing catch up. But now with a hard date, 2022 feels like it's the end of the road, right? And I'm certain for you guys, you're consulting your clients or your independent businesses. What is this looked upon as? How is this going to impact your individual businesses or the businesses of your customers? Maybe we kick off with TJ, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. So it's interesting, right? Because, I mean, we have been in the space of targeting and tracking people using cookies for the last 25 years. And marketers have typically looked at data as being the holy grail in whichever form it is, siloed or fragmented, to capture different pieces of information on browser behavior or context or the ability to find people at a certain location and drive certain interesting offers or predictability in their actions. It is interesting to note that different clients are at different phases of maturity when it comes to this ecosystem. Certain clients are still in development of what their data strategies could look like. Others are far into how to bring that fragmentation into consolidation by using the right types of data and technologies. Yet others are global clients based locally and are getting inspired by what their international counterparts are sharing in terms of data innovation at the heels of intersection of technology. And I believe that if we were to take a pyramid approach to this clients where, you know, there is a broad ecosystem in which the scale has still not gone away and the wish and the need for trackability and measurability using third-party data has not gone away. And then as you go upward into the pyramid, you have the sophistication that comes with absolute deeper investments, but not necessarily the large amount of scale, because we need to get sharper in contextual behavior. So I would say the impact of certain clients and certain categories have been questioned. They're questioning the direction forward. What will happen? How does preparedness look like? What should our roadmap be towards the future of data strategy? Others are developing governance around data practices. Yet a third are figuring out what is the talent model internally at a very senior level to have the data officers and IT and data work together in a way that will help equate what the future will look like in terms of executive sponsors in the organization. So I think there is a talent question that needs to be answered for mature clients. There is a technology question, which is the right technology given the maturity of where you sit in the pyramid of your maturity in terms of your data strategy and acceleration. And third is, are we really going to say that cookies are bygones after 2 years? Probably not. Advertising will change the way we're going to look and target people, but the sunset of the cookies are going to find another way to have a comeback in terms of different types of technical implementations and workarounds, which we will discuss.
Absolutely. And Yomna, from your standpoint, I mean, you're looking at this from a different angle with publishers per se. How does that impact? How does this impact your ecosystem?
Look, I totally agree with TJ that I think as an organization, it all depends on where you are in terms of data maturity. At the same time, reality is, the industry that we've built, if we're thinking advertising specifically in media, has been underpinned by cookies for the last 25 years. So the way today we identify, we track, we measure an individual is based on cookies, whether we like it or not. So automatically, wherever you are in that chain, you're impacted. Now, is the impact huge or is the impact minimal? Depends on where you are and what type of data you are and how first-party data rich you are, right? When it comes to targeting, I mean, everyone has been seeing a major decrease in the volume of cookie pool that we globally have, and the same thing in the region. So technically, we're seeing fewer users and we're being able to track them for a shorter amount of time. Also, it's not just targeting. So today, cookies underpin the core currency for targeting and measurement. So measurement has been impacted as well. The way we measure has changed. Today, methodologies like multi-touch attribution cannot work in the same way anymore. We're starting to see things like incrementality measurement and, getting a bit more creative on how do we measure. Now, for us as a publisher, targeting obviously is one major way of how we diversify revenue today. So even before Chrome, it's been a journey, like you said, Kunal, and it's a pivot to privacy journey, starting from the regulations to the browsers eventually, from Safari, Firefox, and now Chrome. But I guess Chrome was the latest announcement with the most major impact, simply because of the market share from a browser standpoint that Chrome accounts for today in the market. But we've been seeing a decrease in scale for a while now, regardless of the announcement. And that has been impacting us as a publisher because it's all about scale, accuracy, and the depth of the data that we have. And this is our proposition to the market. Now, having said that, today, it's not all dark and gloomy. I mean, this is the situation, this is the market, this is the state of the market. But for us, actually, we're in a place in the ecosystem where we're very lucky because we're very first-party data rich, which basically means if you think about the winners and the losers in the ecosystem today, publishers definitely have one of the most valuable data today, and they are the winners in the ecosystem. Now, to be able to capitalize on this, there's a lot that needs to be done from a strategy standpoint, from a technology standpoint, and I guess we'll discuss that a little bit later. Yeah, you're in a good place, but you need to act on it, basically.
Yeah, and Yumna, like we were talking about this for a long time. I mean, we've been in conversations for a while, and I believe that marketers need to be bold. We are sitting on some deterministic data that is coming from our call centers, that is coming from our CRM, that is coming from our publisher partnerships, that not necessarily is carrying a mass scale, but is carrying the rich insight and the depth that is very important for category insights. Now, the development track of that from a starting point looks at innovation in the ecosystem, right? And that innovation is something that we as marketers and consultants and publishers need to have an appetite and be also met with a similar appetite from our brands and clients as well. Because it's a co-investment, right? From a strategy point of view, and also from a technology investment point of view, right? Kunal, you are on the technology side of the business. It is about understanding where the clients are, but also adding the right technologies to flourish on the needs of that client. And at the end of the day, we're looking for interesting ways in which we're connecting the media, because that's where we're finding our clients, or we're connecting them from the restaurants or the gas stations or the retail stores, wherever they are offline, or they're sitting in their comfort of their home in front of the television sets, right? So it's the idea of the culmination of all channels in a very innovative fashion as well. And I think just broadcasting that thought of being bold is, I think, at the center of what I wanted to say at Yumna's comments, which are all leading towards that.
Yeah, that's some great points. Pulling you in, Steve, here, I remember, watching a presentation you delivered at the Vibe Festival in Dubai in November last year. And you were, very similarly, Google's announcement wasn't out then, but you were already speaking of, how to put together the right stack or utilize all of the right data across all of these different layers. You want to shed some light on how Google's announcement has impacted the way you're working with your clients as well, Steve, please?
Yeah, look, ultimately, there's two things that we need to know that are going to happen. We have to change the behavior, whether we're a publisher or a brand, in what our expectations are and what our behaviors are, presenting content or value to customers. And on the other end, this is a good change, for customers. But on the advertising side, there's a fear that this is going to somehow drop revenues and people aren't going to spend, as much anymore. But that's just simply not the case. If you look at the numbers over the last 7 to 10 years, when you look at overall advertising spend, right, it's only gone up. This is through GDPR. This is through every single regulation, change in browser behavior, et cetera. Because ultimately, we still have to sell to people and find them somehow. And people are wonderful at innovation when there is a barrier or a blocker in the way. We will find new ways to do things. And that's interesting, right, for the industry as we go. I think the hard thing is when I speak to a client is, as a publisher, you're going to have to do a lot more work into understanding how to work with the ad networks and how to actually tighten up your proposition for what you're offering. Because the loss of personalized advertising is something that we've been on the road, on for quite a while. And this is probably going to be one of the largest, cutoffs with the amount of Chrome usage in the entire world. We are going to move into an area where publishers have to work with ad networks and advertising in order to create an evolved ecosystem, let's say, that actually, number one, shares a lot more of the revenue in a fair way, but secondly, helps publishers also communicate better to the targeting networks why people are there or what they should be there, about. So for some clients who are, let's say, news sites, one of the difficulties today is a news site that may be launching that's really generalized. One of the problems around the generalization is that if you have ad networks that can track you, that's fine, because you can be on an article that's about a chocolate chip cookie, but you'll get targeted by something that has nothing to do with that at all. It's just the pair of red shoes that follows you around everywhere that you go. And it has no actual relevance contextually to what you're looking at. So with the loss of that, it requires essentially much more clever technology and less lazy technology in order to actually understand why somebody might be interested in something that you're advertising about. So you can't just do that on the ad tech side. The core of this is that, when the cookie came around in the late 90s, it was entirely privacy compliant. It's just the ad tech industries and MarTech industries really that have taken advantage of it, which nothing wrong with it necessarily, but that's where everything's been balanced so far. As we move into this other area where we're representing consumers, it'll move back more into the brand side, into the publisher side, into the content side. And that's going to require advertising and ad tech companies to work and partner much more with that side, which they haven't had to do in the last couple of decades.
Yeah, that's perfect, Steve. Thanks for that. Thanks for those insights, all of you. So, I mean, by the looks of it, right, I think what you're saying is that there is really, this is going to benefit the consumer, but this is also something that is going to drive change without, really becoming as varying as the headlines make it sound in the behavior that publishers or advertisers have been following, given the reliance on cookies, right? It feels like for me personally, over the last 2 years or so, we've been slammed with acronyms of various kinds that almost always spell the doom, right, of digital marketing, GDPR, and IDFA, and ITP, and so my question here is, and whoever wants to start, is as you see this specifically for our market here, is this a blessing or is this a curse in many ways?
The acronyms?
Those are easy, but just the changes that are coming into our ecosystem, is this going to prompt and promote good behavior that's going to benefit both sides, or is it going to impact one side negatively?
Look, I would say, going back to the point you were making before, eventually this new ecosystem is creating a new set of winners and losers when it comes to data. Having said that, I totally agree with Steve that, every couple of years we have something new in this industry. It's not the first time that we have a challenge. And every time this basically pushes everyone in the industry to become more innovative, more creative, to build better technologies, to build better solutions. So if we think on the long term, my personal point of view is that, whether it's in this region or everywhere globally, this is just the beginning for something better for the consumer, for the publishers, for the advertisers, for the ecosystem. But there's going to be some short-term pains, while we get there. But definitely, it's not as bad and as gloomy as everything that we've been seeing. It's been, and I would say everyone who's been in the industry has been expecting this. It's not like it was a surprise even when it came up, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'll just like to add a few points there. I think, disruption in this kind of environment leads you to think internally from a client perspective of what you want to change in the way you want to do work. And, we have seen from a consulting point of view that more and more clients are now looking at creating in-housing capabilities of where they want to head to. They want to look at how they can work with established partners that obviously live outside of the ecosystem from a media landscape perspective, but also from a capability building perspective. They want to have more control, more transparency, and more choice over the relationships that are leading towards an intersection of, MarTech and AdTech, as you mentioned, Steve. The other aspect is, giving that control also helps them protect against a lot of the onset of the new CDP, customer data protection policies that certain companies internally have mandated when applying marketing rules to it. So I think that this is a natural sort of an evolution of how this is specifically true for large marketers, but also as we're thinking about it, this is a change that is seeping in as we evolve into how we should be controlling the diversity of how we should target in the future.
Yeah, and look, it's the same for us as publishers. I mean, today this did put some pressure on us to change the way we're doing things. From a strategy standpoint, from a technology standpoint, we had to rethink and remap our data strategy to be focused on first party, to be less reliant on third-party cookies. How do we do that? At the core of it is changes in technology. We changed our data management platform recently to make sure that we have a technology partner that could help us from a short-term standpoint to, solve the issues that we're currently facing as a publisher and are not, ideal, mainly scale. I mean, we don't want to lose scale. We want to make sure that we have scale. And then on the long term, you also rethink that strategy to think even beyond dependency on first-party cookies. Because this is where we're heading, right? There's short-term, long-term from a strategy standpoint. How do you change that? How do you make sure you bring the right partner on board? And at the center of it being more and more compliant. That was also part of our journey. We had to change quickly. We had to be proactive enough. So when this is gonna eventually happen, we're in a place where it's actually a better place. It's not a worse place.
Perfect.
Yeah, ultimately, this is really great for consumers and ultimately great for businesses who serve consumers, which should be all of us. Because, what's happening right now is that the industry is playing catch up, essentially to an industry that's been quite abusive of personal privacy. And so this is really, really good, overall, because a lot of the targeting that it happens in effect these days, even if it's profile based, even with the best CDPs, even with the best kind of behavioral understanding that exists, is still ultimately fairly lazy in understanding why a particular consumer is on a particular site or an app, or reading a particular piece of content, or clicking an ad. Whatever it is, we're inferring, a lot just from low amount of behavioral information, and we use what's in the cookie that has tons of history, where we've just looked, where we've been, all the stuff that's sort of trailed us, as a lazy way to actually understand where somebody is, why they're actually there, why they're interacting with you. So that's okay, right? That's what we've had. With the loss of this, companies just have to be a lot smarter, and technology will help that. But ultimately, it is the company strategy that defines what's going to happen, because this is not a technology problem, right? This is almost like an abuse of a piece of technology that existed, that was never intended for the way that it's used today, and has billions and billions of dollars behind it. And instead, what we have is a real kind of reckoning that gets us to a place where a brand will have a much better relationship with their customers. A publisher will have a much better relationship with the customers, and we'll get a better understanding of actually what to produce, what not to produce. That will reduce a lot of waste and increase the level of relevancy that a particular company has with the people that they're trying to transact with. I think it's quite good. It'll be a little bit painful, but like Yumna was saying, we're going to move ahead. Every couple of years, it's new. That's what we do, right? It's why we have experts in the industry, to help us guide us in some ways that make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it feels like this change is, like Yomna said as well, it feels like we've known that it's coming. Now that it's here, it's no longer just the tip of the iceberg, right? It's the entire iceberg underneath the tip that people are trying to manage. Now, in terms of, you guys have spoken really, really eloquently about strategy, in terms of whether it was TJ talking about readiness from a customer standpoint, or Yomna talking about the actual the publisher ecosystem, and having that first party data mindset. Now that's easier said than done, right? It's one of those things that people that interact with Telium as an example, or use Telium as a product, are focused on, right? Getting that first party data strategy right. And it comes with some benefits, obviously more persistent identifiers, and effectively creating a nice bridge between all the data that's available for a brand. Are you seeing that this is leading to more of, strategic focus before technology? Like all of you have said, it's not technology, it's more, is the strategy to be building that first party data set that is going to remain persistent with us in nature?
Yeah, I think, brands have to be brave, and they have to say, this is what we're going to do, right? You can really take two paths. You can say, I'm going to try and take advantage of whatever little, is still dripping out of this tap, or I'm going to go and try and find a new source, or maybe I'll question how that water is being delivered to me, right? Those are harder questions, to answer. I think they're a lot more interesting, and I think the brands that get that right are going to be the ones that have a competitive advantage, going forward. The MarTech is super important and becoming more important, but not because it's something that's going to solve all of these problems that we have in front of us. It's because the MarTech is a bridge and of capability to every marketer. The sort of the gulf that we have in between the existence of technology and where marketers' capabilities are getting bigger and bigger. So MarTech becomes a translation layer, much like Apple products are a great translation layer, and they hide the complexity while revealing capability for people. So the technology in the MarTech itself is going to have to get better also, right? I mean, a lot of it's quite legacy already inside of its small area. But the CDPs, the DMPs, the identity management platforms of today are going to be more and more important, and understanding how they're built is going to be extremely important, because some of these platforms that are built with privacy first are going to be successful, and they're going to help the clients that they have to be successful. But the ones that are really not, you probably won't hear very much about, except you'll see their client bases decline, and they'll disappear in a couple of years. That's the reality, right? Is that we work in a very fast-moving industry, in a fast-moving environment, and the people who can pivot and move and become a lot more and stay agile are going to win.
Absolutely. Yeah. And TJ, for you, are you seeing with your customers working on transformation initiatives, is that from a strategic standpoint really true?
Yeah. So from our customers' point of view, like digital transformation has been one of the key preceptors and precursors during COVID-19. I mean, it really, for those who had them on its roadmap, it suddenly become the thing that they're going to want to have to take into account. And transformation has been quite interesting, because one of the key learnings and insights that we've had from our Rumble sessions with our clients is, how can I create a unified story? How can I make sure that my budgets are being spent more efficiently? How can I monetize my current data to be able to reach our customers valuably? Is there a way that I can bring more interesting partnerships to the table that can help in my transformation journey? So yes, it is a bunch of, rejiggering the mindset of organizationally how a marketing function actually speaks to the CMO, to the CCO, but also from a wider angle obtains the credibility from other buyers like the CFO and the CEO and the CIO, because they are all executive sponsors of change for that digital transformation. Now, for me, it is the work that we're doing around DMPs or CDPs or unified ID resolutions or people-based marketing, as we call it in layman's terms, identifying contextually relevant offers to the right person at the right time, at the right moment of opportunity, is a factor of exactly where is the problem for that particular client. And if it is the case that the client is really losing its market share because of structural data joining capabilities, then yes, a CDP is important, because a customer data platform really focuses on designing for identity, designing for a single tenant, designing for high scale open APIs, a full life cycle of activation and integration, looking at a customer from a holistic lens, and then ensuring that there is efficiencies of supply of the right offers, but with efficiencies of demand as well. You go back a level and you think about, how DMPs will have to restructure. DMPs are going to be very much around, because we're still going to have those cozied up publisher relationships, the relationships with the economists, so with the Shuairi group in the region, with the Vogues.coms, very premium relationships, which they are working on upping the architecture of both their supply and harnessing their storage of first-party data to help brands like mine to ensure that they're connecting. So data management platforms, very client-centric or publisher-centric, still needs to have sort of a multi-tenant approach versus a single-tenant approach, which I talked about from a CDP perspective. And it is to serve en masse, meaning like there is affinities, there are segmentations that can help enrich the consumer behavior, which is still very important. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if you go back one level behind the DMPs. We were in the era of the 2000s, before pre-DMPs, where we had purchase data mapped to identity, right? We had direct mails coming to our mailboxes in the USPS in North America. I mean, it is an evolution, but depending on where you are, I believe where the gap in the transformation is, the quality of the transformation will have to be married to the challenge of the business. And I think that from the conversations that I am hearing, there is a more hue and cry about how do I bring those capabilities inside? How do I use my customer data better? How do I monetize my assets in a meaningful way, but by driving the local value in terms of the reaching out at the right moment.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yomna, your views?
So I am totally aligned with what TJ was saying. For me, honestly, the CDP is not necessarily for everyone. It depends definitely on where you are in the journey. But my overall point of view at this stage, at least, is that CDPs have been designed with the marketer in mind. So everything that TJ was talking about, right? Making sure that as a marketer, you have this single view of your consumer across channels. You can actually deliver an omni-channel experience. You need to store and activate PII data, paid and non-paid advertising as well, non-paid, and so it's not just focused on paid media. Across your digital assets, across your own website, across everything that you own as a brand and a marketer. As a publisher, we have slightly different challenges at this stage. It's not that this is not important. I'm a big advocate of identity in general and trying to build that identity graph and having that single customer view for consumers. But today, when I think about our main challenges, it's being able to provide scale using first-party data, using edge processing, so we can activate on real-time traffic and certain technologies that maybe today in legacy DMPs they don't have. This is why we moved and migrated to a new DMP again. But there are some new players on the ground that are very designed and focused for the publishers to help publishers solve their challenges. So from that angle, I guess I see that eventually when maybe as a publisher, we will have a lot more PII data that we need to process. This is where you think, okay, what is the next stage? What is the longer term, going back to the data strategy. But on a short term, a DMP that's designed to solve our challenge as a publisher could add a lot more value from a scale standpoint, because anyway, at this stage, we don't necessarily have a lot of PII data working on it, but it's a longer term. The other thing I'd like to raise is there's this misconception that CDPs are focused on first party, DMPs are focused on third party. In reality, legacy DMPs, again, yes, they were focused on third party, but the new generation DMPs are not. And this is why for us now, the whole focus is on scaling our first party data, because we know that it's extremely valuable within the ecosystem. It would allow us to be in a place where we can support brands through partnerships on first party data, because this is what's required and this is what's scarce in the market today. So yeah.
I'm so happy that the knowledge and the expertise is, obviously just going across it into the publisher side, the brand side, and out of the control of just the vendors, because the vendors were really driving the conversation, during the first 7 years of this, this marketing technology and advertising technology conversation. What they said went, because there just wasn't enough knowledge yet, right? So all of, we talk about, early movers and that kind of advantage. The early movers in this were the ad tech companies and were the marketing technology companies, and publishers in particular were really left behind and really owned none of the market itself. And that's where all the customers are. That's where all the customer data is, right? As a publisher, as a brand, you own that relationship that the advertisers want, right? So for us to be able to be in a place now where we are pushing back, we are fighting back, allows us to actually dictate so much more of the conversation as to where we need to go, because the relationship that's held between your customer and your brand is between your customer and you. And that's where it is. It's not with the advertiser. The advertiser is like a parasite, trying to get what it can from the outside. And what really needs to happen, and I'm echoing another point, that's been made by TJ and Yumna, is, that as we evolve this ecosystem, we really need to go into this new area where it is a very fair exchange, across publishing ecosystems and advertising ecosystems, because we all want to do similar things in terms of generating revenue and, providing great experiences for customers, and helping them to find the things they want to find. But we're not there, right? What we have in a dynamic across the industry is not there. And what a Google cutting off, third-party cookies, what Apple is doing in killing the IDFA over the next 2 years, what they're doing is they're trying to rebalance, the industry so that we have to do these things, where we have to go into an area where there is a collaborative effect on how to solve these problems together, rather than just sort of bastardizing technology that exists already. So I personally, just as an advisor, as a consultant, I'm very happy that there is so much more of a deep knowledge, on that side, because it is a shift that has needed to happen for a while, and it's really good to see.
Yeah, that's well put, Steve. We could go on and I could keep asking you guys questions. I see that there's over a dozen questions on the Q&A, so I'm going to pause. Yeah, I mean, look, it's been fascinating. I think if I can, tell you my 3 key takeaways from all of the amazing nuggets you've shared. One is, it's not all doom and gloom, right? Which is, every time you read the headlines, it's like, oh my God, what's going to happen in the future? So not all doom and gloom. Effectively, what you're saying is it's a win-win with some nuances at the start. There will be an adjusting period, but at the end of the day, brands that get it right will delight customers and benefit themselves, which is needed. Interesting around the maturity of a customer as it comes to actually building that first-party data set and utilizing that effectively in whatever technology, right? Point taken from everyone. At the end of the day, technology is an enabler. Maybe a 3-letter acronym which starts with a C is right for you versus a 3-letter acronym that might start with a D, right? It's actually based on what you're looking to solve for and your capability. So fascinating insights. Thank you so much for those. I'm going to kick off with the Q&A, and whoever wants to go for free fall. So first one, how can brands wipe away old attribution methods and think about value rather than talking about what cookies can do? We've covered some of this, but who wants to go?
I will say something really, really short about this.
Yes.
In terms of attribution, it's still always going to be important. Of course, we want to know from a journey perspective, how and why, right? Somebody's gotten there, and what we can do about it. I foresee the ultimate death / pivoting of multi-touch attribution platforms, of which, I have so much painful experience in trying to implement them, because they were the most important, wonderful thing as of 3-4 years ago, when it is such an inexact science, right? So anybody that tells you that you can deterministically understand, why somebody has actually purchased this, or 17.7% of their reasoning behind buying your thing is because of, this email, is ridiculous, right? Human beings are logistical creatures and they are emotional creatures. We can start together to understand, but to sort of just give the work in trying to understand exactly what a customer does, what they do, is a bit silly, and the loss of our ability to easily track with cookies, which is essentially the basis of most of the multi-touch attribution platforms, it's not going to be great for them.
I'll just add to this. I actually not totally disagree, but I see the value of using, multi-touch attribution. I agree with you that it's not, on its own the one truth that you have to stick by. At the same time, it does give you some sort of attribution that today, especially for publishers like us, for example, we play in the display and video fields. We're not, your lower funnel sort of conversion. If you're not doing proper attribution, it's going to be hard to attribute, the value that our media is bringing to the table. Having said that, I'm also going to be a little bit maybe harsh with my feedback, because we're asking about value and how do we measure that, but unfortunately in this market I haven't seen a lot of brands and marketers properly using and setting up multi-touch attribution in the first place, especially with the move to performance marketing. What we've seen is a move to performance marketing focused on lower funnel. I want a lead with a certain cost per lead. I don't care where it comes from. I don't care who contributed to that conversion, and this is our definition of performance in most of the cases. So when I hear someone really interested to talk about proper value and measurement and attribution, I love to have this conversation. And I would say that even though it's going to be more challenging to do multi-touch attribution going forward, there's going to be different ways to measure, and there's a kind of big trends going on going back to incrementality measurements, which basically means you have a group of unexposed people and a group of exposed people, and you just set up a framework around that depending on which media you're trying to measure, what are your objectives, and you always can try to assess value if you're intending to do that, which is the most important thing in everything that we're doing.
Yeah, and particularly I agree with you now, especially, and also just I have 2 points on this argument, having done multi-touch attribution for performance marketing. As long as it is, as long as the box of the attributable media types is online only, and it's a digital campaign, and then you have different sources of digital campaign. We have social, we have influencers, we have a paid, we have publisher direct. Even within that ecosystem, there's a construct of how are we going to distribute the attribution of channels. For that particular business challenge, this is a really great answer, multi-touch attribution. It gets a little slightly murky, but still directionally positive when you look at online, offline. And to that, there are different types of cross-ID device tracking technologies that can help you demonstrate between online, offline. But beyond that, I'd like to add that loyalty marketing and loyalty programs play a very valuable part here. And what we have noticed is when clients have loyalty programs, they're easily able to identify. Now, again, I go back to the idea of being first party centric, is that they're able to quickly identify what worked offline and what were the behaviors of that customer in the app online. And that connector is, to me, a way of attributing the behavior of the customer, both online and offline, and applying those insights towards acquisition marketing, which is a different way of looking at attribution.
Yeah, I think that is so absolutely true. We need to look at what this entire stack is, right? Because if we falsely, I think, depend on just one platform to be the be all and end all, I think we leave ourselves in a lot of risk. So it's more important to look at the stack and have, knowledge, experience, to understand, what are these other pieces that you can connect to this to actually be able to gain some insights on what drives revenue for your business, right? Do you have a lot of offline transactions that really drive a lot of the behavior and help you to understand where people onboard? Is it television? Is it phones? Et cetera. And plug in the thing that actually works for you into your ecosystem to understand, as a stack perspective, how you can take the more than the sum of its parts, right, that are there to do something for you, right? Don't just go out there and buy every single damn acronym, that exists. That's terrible. It's very wasteful, and it takes a long time to integrate a platform. anyway. So, take the time, right? Be smart, get advice as to what is going to be most impactful, I think, for where that business is on their particular curve.
Awesome. Thank you guys for the answers. This one's an interesting one. Hi, thanks for the insights. Could we shed light on the impact of the new consumer protection laws in the UAE on the conversation we're having at the webinar? This is, I think in light of the potential GDPR-like legislation that we're expecting.
Yumna, this is totally for you.
Yeah, sure. Go for it. Obviously in July, we've seen the DIFC data protection law coming into place, and October is the deadline to make sure that companies are compliant. But it's still in a way confined to the DIFC zone. It's not a UAE law. It's confined in the sense, if a company is based in DIFC or a company is processing data in DIFC, that means there's definitely need to be compliance, and it's very close to GDPR because it's been inspired by GDPR in the first place. But also it's a bit more than that, because eventually if you're a company outside the IFC, by dealing with a company within the IFC that has to be compliant, then you have to be compliant. So even though legally and officially it's still not a UAE law, but eventually it's going to expand outside the IFC for unofficially for the reasons that we were just discussing. Also, if you're a company that has a branch in the IFC, that means all of your branches have to be compliant. So it's not just limited, but it's still limited. Having said that, eventually, even though we don't have proper visibility on when it's going to be 100% active on a country level, we know that it's coming. We've seen what's happening and the changes in terms of data privacy laws in Bahrain and Egypt and Qatar. Like, there's different countries going in that direction, and UAE is one of the first focusing on data. With Smart Dubai government, a lot of initiatives there, yeah, definitely on the way when no proper visibility yet.
Thank you for that. Yep, very pertinent. I've just got the nudge from Sanjay that this is Kunal, you need to end this now, which is unfortunate in many ways, because we have so many amazing questions that have come through. But Sanjay is the boss, so I'm going to follow his lead. Can I just take a minute and say thank you to all three of you for the fascinating insights, actually literally giving us everything that you've got during busy times. And I'm certain that everyone's enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so very much. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Sanjay,
Thanks for organizing this.
Thank you, yeah, a lot, Kunal, for moderating the session, and Sanjay for organizing this great opportunity. If there are questions that we haven't been able to answer, and I've just glossed over some of the very interesting ones, definitely do send it over to us. We will attempt to answer it in writing. And feel free to contact me if there are any questions that are relevant to my side or my sort of expertise, obviously, and then we'll try to get them answered as well, because I'm seeing them and they're quite interesting.
Likewise.
Right, thank you so much, guys. I think that's the plan. We have a lot of questions over here. I think we need to follow up this webinar with another webinar that covers this topic, because there are a lot more questions here.
Yeah.
So, no, but what we're going to do is we're going to send these questions around to all our panelists, and we're going to get them to answer these questions, and we'll have them posted on Martech Vibe. So you guys can log on to Martech Vibe, and then I can collect some data. But yeah, we'll have it posted on Martech Vibe. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really want to thank the panelists for taking the time out and being with us. For our audience, I hope you enjoyed the session. Please send us your feedback. As it's going to help us build better content for our future editions. Up next, we're supporting a very exciting webinar by Telium on the 19th of August, a great lineup of regional brands and leaders with a very exciting agenda. The link to register is already in the chat section. And as for Martech Vibe, we'll be covering the most talked about technology over the past 2-3 years. And if you haven't guessed already, yes, we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence in marketing. Is it more than a buzzword in marketing? Can brands use AI to maximize reach, sales, and growth? Join us for the next webinar where we discuss the application of AI in marketing. We will be announcing the dates soon. So make sure you follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and also do not forget to subscribe to our newsletters. Thank you once again for joining us. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Bye.